The Silver Reward by Austin Blevins. Book 1 of the Courtyard of Seven Stone series. My story started out just as most adventurous tales do. I had just graduated from Rose Hill High School a month prior to my grand discovery. I was 18 years old and couldn't wait to go out and conquer the world as an adult. My whole life was a constant search for adventure. The efforts of my search seemed to always be met with failure. In modern-day life, there is far too much uniformity for me. I have always been in love with chaos. Ever since I was a boy, I absolutely delighted in the differences amongst human beings. Isn't it obvious that the differences of our beliefs, appearances, actions, and conclusions are what make it all so beautiful? My absolute delight was in the variety of the human experience. Such a visionary point of view got me into trouble from the very beginning. My quest for adventure had already accumulated enough scandal for one life, and I was just 18 years old. I had broken almost every known rule or code of conduct that Rose Hill High School had. I probably spent more time in the principal's office than the actual classroom. The only reason they allowed me to graduate was that I was an absolute natural genius in academic affairs. It's not that I tried hard or studied. I simply knew the answers to the teacher's questions in a weird, intuitional way. This was enough to save my diploma, but not my self-esteem. As a result of all this troublemaking and being always called the bad guy, my spirits had dropped. My excitement for the possible discovery of adventure had died and dwindled away with my youth. I had finally become an adult, which meant that any possibility for adventure was for sure over with now. I hadn't even begun life as a corporate slaving adult, and I already hated it. I should not have given up hope so quickly, though. Adventure was coming straight for me whether I liked it or not. Destiny calls to its chosen at the strangest of times. It was summertime, and the clouds obscured the heat of the sun. A slight breeze blew through the fields, making it a very cool summer day. I was walking through one of my friend's pastures with my fishing pole and tackle box in tow. The search for a job had frustrated me for the day, and I had thrown up my hands in frustration. I had decided to just give up for the day and go fishing. My parents just went on and on about the necessity of getting a job. They didn't care for my sentiments about destiny, or higher purpose, or helping others, or any of that. They just wanted me to get a job. Any job would have satisfied them, it seemed. Why are people so short-sighted? Isn't a person's happiness worth something? I had just thrown up my hands for the day and taken refuge in the thing that always made me feel better. Nature was always there, no matter the circumstances. Going out into the forests or walking the creeks always calmed my mind and raised my spirits. Perhaps it was the contrariness of nature to regular life that thrilled me so much. I am not sure as to why I loved nature so much, only that I did and still do. The pasture I walked through was overgrown with natural grasses that stretched up to 4 or 5 feet high. The local farmers received small checks from the government to let the natural grass grow on its own. It served as a sanctuary for the animals to live in. It was a pain to walk through, though. I picked the burrs and stickers off my pants every few minutes in a futile effort to rid myself of them. I soon gave up on these efforts and just let the stickers accumulate on my jeans. After about a half-mile of walking, I had arrived at my destination. I came through the last of the chest-high natural grass as a thicket of trees were just up ahead. While brushing the burrs from my pants, I smiled with excitement. It was time to get some fishing done. One of my favorite holes was in the middle of the thicket of trees that stood before me. I was on the very back corner of my buddy's land. This thicket turned into a large section of woods that stretched for a very long ways. Nobody knew who owned it, so we never really explored it. We never really went in there for this reason, but I snuck in just far enough to get to the creek. I wasn't hurting anybody by catching fish and throwing them back. It was my secret fishing hole nestled away where nobody ever went. It was perfect. I made my way into the woods as I left the pasture grass behind me. The thicket was full of large cedar trees, so it was very easy to get lost. I marked the direction of the sun in relation to the field behind me for my bearing. Then I charged through the dense cedar trees, making a beeline for the creek. The creek channel opened up before me as I smiled wide. I loved my little secret spot. It was where the creek took a 90-degree turn that there was a large beaver dam. This beaver dam was one of the biggest I had ever seen. The dam caused a large pool to form where it rose over 10 feet in depth and stretched 50 yards across. Most of the creek was knee-high and only 5 or 6 feet across. This was a very big fishing hole in the creek. With stealth, I climbed down the steep bank of the creek channel and stood on the edge of this large fishing hole. It was time to get some fishing done. There was a fire tiger-colored crankbait on the end of my line. I unhooked the lure as I looked at it for a moment, deciding if I wanted to use it or not. "Yeah, it'll work," I mumbled to myself while throwing it into the water. Slow and steady was how I reeled the crankbait through the water. That was how my grandfather had taught me to do it, nice and easy. After a few casts I was getting antsy. Why hadn't I caught anything yet? Then I saw a large stump on the far side of the hole. It was pretty far, but I gave it a shot anyway. My lure landed within inches of the stump as I jumped up and down with excitement. I began to reel the lure towards me nice and easy as I got a big bite. Whatever it was almost took the rod out of my hands as I pulled upwards to set the hook. The hook was set and the fight was on. The line on my reel squealed as the fish ran. I would get some of the line in no sooner than the fish would take the same amount of line back. This happened over and over again as I fought this watery giant for 5 straight minutes. I pulled up hard with my rod, trying to tire the fish out as it jumped high out of the water. Its body was dark green, its belly was white, and it was big, really big. I planned to land the base no matter how long it took. After much fight and excitement, I had landed the fish. I pulled him from the water with a triumphant yell. The sunshine shimmered on his glistening body. He must have weighed over 8 pounds. It was the biggest bass I had ever caught, and I was so excited. I took out my cell phone and snapped a few pictures of it to show my dad. He would be excited. With joy, I tossed him back into the water. The water swirled where he swam off, and I waved goodbye. I had caught the biggest bass of my life in the smallest creek in town. The sun was beginning to fall on the horizon, and it was time to head home. As long as I got back to the pasture before dark, it would be okay. Walking through pasture in the dark isn't so bad, but dense woods is another thing entirely. I could do it if I had to, but I decided against it with it being a cedar thicket. I secured my lure back on my pole and threw my bag onto my back. I was just about to head out when I heard a twig break on bank above me. I looked up expecting to see a raccoon or deer, but found something completely unexpected. Above me on the edge of the creek channel stood a man in a black hooded robe. His robe had strange designs all over it, and you couldn't see his face under the hood. I was terrified as my feet glued to the spot. I should have run, but I was just too scared. I expected the man in the robe to do something crazy. Maybe run at me or run away, but he did neither. He just stood there with his fingers interlaced as if he was waiting for me to calm down. I soon relaxed and asked him, "What is it that you want from me?" I asked in as courageous a manner that I could muster. He responded, "I want nothing from you, Max. You have been chosen for a great task. Your entire life has been a constant yearning for something more, has it not? You always knew deep in your heart that you were meant for a greater purpose in life, haven't you? Well, this is that moment. Follow me and find out who you truly are. All it takes is a little courage and a desire to help others. Do you accept or no? Will you run back towards your miserable existence, or will you take hold of your destiny and make it your own? The choice is yours, Max. Will you stay or will you take a chance?" I was speechless to the man's words. They were so spot on that I didn't know what to say. Yeah, I wanted to live a life of adventure. Of course I wanted to be a hero, but doubt and fear began to gnaw at my mind. My thoughts took me out of the present moment as I fought with myself over what to do next. The man in the robe motioned for me to follow him as fear, doubt, worry, and apprehension gripped my soul. I didn't know what to do in that moment. It's one thing to think and dream about something, but to actually face it in real life is something else entirely. Should I run away from him or run towards him? I just wasn't sure. I decided it best to follow my intuition. What would you have done? All of a sudden, I threw my fishing pole and pack onto the ground. I ascended up the ravine and took off running towards the man in the robe. The mysterious man fled as I topped the ravine. He wasn't going to get away that easy. The robed figure's laughter rang through the air as I chased him through the cedar thicket. The idea of a little adventure had excited me to the utmost. I ran with all I had towards the man in the robe. This was the chance I had always been waiting for. Life was about to get a lot more interesting indeed. Ominous and uninvited hooded robed figures tend to have this effect. We ran for a couple 100 yards through the cedar thicket. I soon realized that I couldn't turn back even if I had wanted to. The cedar thicket was so thick that I'd for sure be lost. Running as fast as I could, I kept the robed figure within distance. He was way faster than I thought he would be. He must have been a running back before his secret society days. Soon the thickness of the cedar trees gave way to open air. We had come to a clearing in the forest. The robed figure motioned for me to walk beside him. We crossed over a line of stones that stuck out of the ground. As we crossed these stones, a flash of light seemed to permeate across the ground. I did not know this then, but I had passed a point that there was no return from. I had passed beyond the threshold. There we stood in the middle of a vast courtyard. A circular line of white stones made a perimeter around the courtyard. There were no trees or bushes within the courtyard. It was all nicely kept and mowed down. The cedar trees were all spaced evenly around the courtyard. It was then that I realized the cedar trees must have been planted in a particular manner. They were so evenly spaced that someone must have planted them on purpose. Someone had planted them to hide this courtyard from outside view. Whoever owned this courtyard didn't want anybody to know it was there. I followed the man in the robe towards the center of the large courtyard. My nerves were so excited that I felt sick. What on earth is going on? I kept thinking as I followed the black-robed figure. The sun was setting on the horizon, and the moon was already making its appearance in the sky. The moon was full, and it was beautiful. The stars blazed with that intensity only known to people that live in the country. It was a magical night, the start of an unimaginable journey. 7 large stones stood in the center of the courtyard. It looked kind of like Stonehenge, but there were no rectangular stones on top of the large upright ones. The 7 very large stones were designed in a circular fashion in the exact center of the courtyard. As we got close to the stones, I realized just how big they actually were. They stretched 10 feet high and 5 foot wide. They must have weighed 2,000 pounds each. How in the world did they get them into this courtyard in the middle of the woods? I looked towards the man in the robe, who laughed loudly and said, "Welcome to the Courtyard of 7 Stones. Only very rare souls are chosen to visit this place. Are you ready to begin your journey?" I nodded at him as I mumbled, "Yeah, I guess so." I still wasn't sure what was going on. To say I was nervous was a vast understatement. All of a sudden, he grabbed a hold of each of my wrists as he pulled me close. I pulled back to find that I couldn't move at all. He was very strong. "Are you prepared to take an irrevocable oath? Are you prepared to be the hero that you always knew you were supposed to be?" I nodded once more as he pulled me closer. Our faces were inches apart as he asked, "Do you sincerely swear to live for the all, instead of the I?" I thought for a moment and then said, "Yes, I swear it." "Do you sincerely swear that you seek to better yourself so that you will be of better service to all humanity?" he asked as I thought long and hard about the question. After 30 long seconds I replied, "Yes, I swear it." He then asked, "Do you sincerely swear to discover your true nature and to act in accordance with it? In other words, do you swear to find out why you are here on earth and to then act on that realization?" I replied, "Yes, I swear it." From that moment on, my life would never be the same. My oath bound me to the hero's path, the great work. He released me as I took a step back. He then pointed his right hand towards the sky as he said, Let all the powers of the heaven assist you in this holy task known as your life. Amen. He then pointed his left hand towards the ground as he said, Let all the powers of the earth assist you in this holy task known as your life. Amen. He then outstretched his right hand as I shook it. He laughed loudly and with joy as he said, Welcome, brother, to the beginning of a life of joy. Yes, there is much duty and obligation in the days to come, but joy is there also. No longer will you feel like you are wasting your life. Now you live for a grander purpose. Now you truly live for the all, instead of the I. Come now, let me show you my companions who will guide you on your journeys. A man such as you has much help, more even than he may be aware of. He motioned for me to follow him as we walked into the circle of 7 stones. Before each of the large stones was a being in a robe. One of the stones was left empty but was soon taken up by the man who brought me here. Each of them had on a different colored robe, and the stones behind them each had differing symbols upon them. The symbols were strange and unknown to me. They looked like Egyptian hieroglyphs but were different somehow. In a counterclockwise direction they stood as follows. The man in the black robe, a being in a dark blue, a being in blood red, a being in bright yellow, a being in light green, a being in dark orange, and lastly a being in shimmering silver. All of them had their hoods up, obscuring my vision of their faces, except the one in silver. She was a beautiful woman with plump cheeks and bright red lips. Her hair was a shimmering bright blonde that fell to her waist. Her dress was of a shimmering silver color, and her entire being enchanted me. She was so very beautiful. I was soon interrupted from my carnal staring as the man in the black robe began to speak. His face was veiled by the hood of his robe, making his presence ominous and disconcerting. As he spoke, I noticed that his robe was not only black but had purple trim on the wrists and the collar. Each of us is appointed to guard our stone. This is the Courtyard of 7 Stones, a most magical place. Behind each of us lies not only a stone but a doorway into another world, another dimension. Within this courtyard lies 7 doors to 7 realms. Only one of these realms is open to you now. Once you conquer this first realm, the next one will open for you. I reside at the very last door, the 7th world of blackness. We will introduce ourselves to you in descending manner from the last to the first. The last of us to speak may or may not open their door for you. Once inside, your adventure really begins. Each world has an adventure for you. Each world has a reward. Conquer one and you become a great man, a great hero. Conquer a few and history will always remember your name. Conquer all 7 and you become the master. Now, it is time for some introductions. My name is Tazaf. I stand over and guard this stone of blackness, which lies beyond the abyss. You cannot enter here, not yet. I am the master of time and death. I wield the scythe of the reaper and tinker with the gears of the universal clock. In my world are grave mysteries. Perhaps one day you may come to see them, but that time has not yet come. You must slay thyself before entering my house. You must let it all go to enter my realm, every last drop into my cup of eternity. I wish to see you in my world one day, the day when you are ready. Goodbye for now, young hero. May the luck of the gods be with you always. Tazaf turned and walked into his stone as a bright light flashed. He was gone. After Tazaf's solemn introduction, I turned to the next being who stood in a dark blue robe. The robe had yellow trim with 6 pointed stars embroidered on the cuffs in gold. This regal being then threw his hood back as I gazed upon his austere form. Beneath his curled dark brown hair sat a golden crown upon. Large sapphires and rubies on the crown glistened in the moonlight, and much gold jewelry hung from his wrists and neck. A golden staff was held in his right hand that had a ball on one end, a staff of authority. He looked to be a king, a ruler of men and spirits alike. His eyes were unwavering and steady, but his gaze was calm and full of sympathetic love. Whatever kingdom he ruled over must be a great place to be in. My interest was piqued to the utmost as he bowed low and began to speak. I am Tazad, and I welcome you to our courtyard. I am the guardian of my stone, of my world. It is a world of kings, rulers, gurus, and great men and women of authority. I am master of the ways of leadership. I instruct the kings of all nations in their affairs. I delegate authority with perfect ease. Democracy is a direct manifestation of my will. Let each man and woman govern themselves and act in accordance with the universal way. Come to my world as a leader only. If followers instead of leaders venture into my realm, they will find nothing but terror. I will cut off their heads and chop them into bits. But those few that strive to guide the many are my chosen. To them are all my gifts given. Goodbye and good luck to thee. With a regal bow and confident smirk, Tazad disappeared through his own portal. I turned towards the being dressed in blood red with attentiveness. He was intimidating, to say the least. His robe was blood red with yellow-colored trim. A golden six-pointed star was embroidered on each cuff, and his eyes flashed red beneath his hood. He pulled his hood back to reveal a head full of braided hair that fell to his shoulders. His muscular frame and athletic build was evident even beneath the robe. On his waist hung a sword, and in his left hand he held a shield. His eyes flashed red as I met his gaze. He drew his sword without taking his eyes off of me, as I swallowed with apprehension. He pointed the sword at me as he began to speak. My name is Kumel, and I am a warrior. I am master of all things to do with battle, competition, sports, and fighting. I am the patron of active energy that stops not. Decide on an action and do it. Those that hesitate are not of me. The weak and the fearful are not of me. In my world is great adventure and conflict. You may enter if you fear not, young hero. Remember, Max, fear not at all. There is no reason for you to fear anything at all. Of this there is no doubt. Kumel disappeared into his shimmering stone portal as the others had done. I took a deep breath and wiped the sweat from my brow. I steadied myself before looking towards the being in yellow. This being was much more pleasant than the previous one. His robe was a dull yellow color, and a golden sun was embroidered on his chest. He pulled his head back as his bright blonde hair seemed to glow. His hair fell to his waist in golden curls, and a crown of laurel hung on his head. A golden-colored aura danced about his body. His eyes were the kindest I have ever seen in my life. Compassion and love seemed to emanate from this being. I could have stared at him forever. His face was soft, and his eyes were bright blue. He bowed low and began to speak with a joyous smile on his lips. My name is Raphael. My realm is a place of beauty. All things that are beautiful are of me. Love is the answer to all issues. Love is the great way. Do not be confused, young hero, for there is love and love. Choose wisely which love you act from. There is the love that possesses and destroys, but another kind of love exists which can do all things. Max, remember to sympathize with other humans, instead of pitying them. Those that pity others may not enter my house, but those that sympathize may come at will. Goodbye and farewell, young hero. May love be the fountain from which all your daily actions pour forth from. Raphael stepped into his portal and was gone as the bright light went with him. I was so sad to see him go. I wanted to run after him, but I took a deep breath as I looked towards the next guardian. The next being stood in a flowing light green robe with white trim on it. Flowery designs were etched all over the robe in a silky white color. The being drew the hood from its face as I beheld the face of a beautiful. It was the most beautiful woman that I had ever seen before. Her hair was dark brown and was braided in a strange pattern. White flowers were braided into her hair at evenly spaced intervals. Her hair was so long that it drug yards behind her, and her lips were bright red. Her eyes shimmered like green diamonds, and her voice was as pleasant as notes coming from a harp. She began to speak as I looked on with excitement. Too much excitement, perhaps. My name is Kahania. I am master of all things to do with devotion and confidence. Look to me with adoration and adornment, and all things shall be yours. To adore life itself is the great way. To worship all things as a direct manifestation of nature is bliss. Come to my door with adoration in thy heart and confidence in thy mind, and you will pass through. Come with scorn and doubt, and I will put my many beasts upon you to eat your flesh and tear out your eyes. Come to me if you will, young hero. May the fire of adoration inflame your heart forever. May your eyes burn with devotion to that which lies beyond. I watched on as Kahania walked into her portal and was gone. I already missed her. The next being stood in a bright orange robe with black symbols drawn upon it. In his right hand was a glowing, winged caduceus, and a gray beard hung to his waist. The caduceus glowed and pulsed with energy, and the snakes upon it were real snakes. The pair of snakes hissed as the angelic wings of the caduceus flapped in the air. His hair was gray, gnarled, long, and unkempt. His gaze was serious but caring. In his opposite hand he held an old leather-bound, a really old book. The title read, "As above, so below," and it enchanted me. What could that phrase mean? I just had no idea. I was soon brought out of my thoughts as the being threw back his hood and began to speak. My name is Mikkel. I am master of all arcane knowledge. The sciences and the religions are a result of my teachings. To know is the drive which must be in your heart. If you do not wish to know, then dare not to enter my realm. Wisdom and knowledge are of mine to give all. The mind is my favorite tool, and its proper use I teach to my chosen. Enter if you wish to use the mind the way it should be used. Enter here with a desire to learn, and you will be instructed on the mysteries of nature. Remember, my hero, as it is above, so shall it be below. I will be seeing you again soon. Farewell for now, Max. Mikkel tossed the book to me as I caught it with surprise. He had read my mind. I wanted that book so bad, and now I had it. I almost opened up to begin reading, but decided to hear the other guardians out first. By the time I looked back up, Mikkel had vanished back into his realm. There was only one other being left now, the woman in the silver robe. The last being stood in a shimmering silver robe. Her skin sparkled like moonlight. She had overflowing blonde hair that was very curly. Her blue eyes twinkled in the night air. Her cheeks were plump and her figure was round. A very attractive smile was on her lips, and compassion seemed to emanate from her. A small silver tiara sat on her head with a crescent moon upon it. A small silver bow was on her shoulder, and a quiver sat on the opposite shoulder. She giggled at me as I blushed before she began to speak. Hello, young hero, and welcome to the beginning of your story. My name is Gabriella. My teachings are whispers in the minds of humanity. My advice comes in the form of intuitional thoughts and dreams. I am mostly ignored by humanity, but every once in a while people listen to my warnings. I deal with parenting and emotions. Those of negative emotions are not of me. The angry and the sad are not of me, but only the thoughtful. Do not let your emotions get the better of you, Max. Be thoughtful and use your mind to transcend these negative emotions. The thoughtful shall enter my realm, and them alone. Stand a while and think before following me inside. In my realm you must learn to become master of the elements of your mind and emotions. You must rule these lower passions, so that they don't rule you. I know that you will do great in my world. Your pure desire to help others will get you very far indeed. Have faith in yourself, Max. I will see you soon, my hero. With that, Gabriella disappeared into the portal. This time the portal did not vanish but stayed wide. The open portal beckoned at me. Doubt, fear, and apprehension began to flood my mind. I began to sweat and my heart raced. I stood there lost in my terrible anxiety for God knows how long. I was almost glad that something came out of nowhere to shock me out of this paranoia. Out of nowhere came a very squeaky voice that said, "Wait, young hero, wait just a second. You must not leave without your most powerful weapon." I looked down to see a small red fox that was running towards me. In the fox's mouth was an object of some sort. The fox walked up to me and spat the object into my hands. I stared at the object for some time. What could all this be about? I held in my hand a small medallion with a golden chain around it. It was a circle divided by lines into 4 equal spaces at every 90 degrees. The fox began to speak as I listened with curiosity. Whenever an animal speaks, it is best to listen. It is not such a common occurrence after all. This is the medallion of equilibrium. Every great hero of ages past that has worn it has triumphed. Balance is the key to all of this. The 4 parts of the circle represent your thoughts, emotions, actions, and will. They are of equal size because they are all in equilibrium. Wear this talisman as a reminder to always stay balanced. One's life and individual being must be in equilibrium before the transcendental can manifest in full. The temple must be built before the god can indwell it. With this in mind, you shall do great things. Farewell, young hero. May the luck of nature be with you always. The fox ran then off into the woods. I stared off in the direction it ran for a moment. I was trying to process all that it had said. I was left standing there with the medallion of equilibrium in my hands. I unhooked the golden chain and fastened it around my neck. It actually looked pretty good as a necklace. It was then that I summoned all of my courage and jumped through the portal to Gabriella's realm. I tried my hardest to remain thoughtful as I jumped through, whatever that meant. The flash of bright light blotted out everything as I hung in eternity for a moment. It must have worked, because my feet soon hit solid ground. I had done it. I had made it to the Silver Lands. Chapter 2. The Beach of Melancholy. I had just taken the biggest step of my entire life. From this moment onward, my life took on a quality that it had never before possessed. An unstoppable momentum was with me now that would never slow down, the momentum of mystery. The worries of mundane life and the toils of my past were temporarily forgotten in my ecstasy. A weird excitement had begun to bubble up within my gut. I had been given a second chance at life, and I would prove myself worthy. I silently vowed to myself to be the hero that I was meant to be. I had kept my eyes closed since I had landed in this other world. I was standing in the ecstasy that accompanied my decision. With a smile on my lips, I opened my eyes to gaze upon the Silver Lands for the first time. To say it wasn't what I had expected was an understatement. White sand was beneath my feet, and the smell of salt water hung in the air. Seagulls flew in the deep blue sky, and the air was warm. It felt to be a spring day at a beach somewhere. I had expected fairy woods, dragons, knights, and the like. Finding yourself in another dimension can be quite strange indeed. I stood there in contemplation for some time as I kicked the white sand around. What was I to do now? My thoughts were soon interrupted by the appearance of 2 pale white feet in the sand before me. I looked up to see a young woman that smiled at me. Her hair was bright blonde and fell to the middle of her back. Her eyes were bright blue, and her skin was a very pale white color, as if she never went outside. She wore a white lace summer dress with blue designs all over it. A blue bow was in her hair, and a silver necklace with a crescent moon pendant hung on her neck. Her demeanor was shy and withdrawn, but of good intention. She was very pretty and seemed nice. I decided that it was okay to let my guard down. She waved and said, "Hello, my name is Luna. It is nice to meet you." I smiled back as I introduced myself and told her that I had just arrived in this strange land. She giggled as I began to take a better look at my surroundings. There were many other people standing around on the beach. They seemed different than me and Luna, though. They just stared at the sand with brainwashed looks on their faces. They looked like people watching television. I scratched my head as confusion arose in my mind. As if in response to my confusion, the sky began to turn color. It went from bright blue to a muddy brown color as I became flustered. I couldn't tell if the sky changing color affected my mood or if it was my mood that affected the color of the sky. A strange paranoia began to come over me. What in the world was going on? The sky began to flash bright red. It even began to blink in a rapid succession as my heart began to race. My breathing became hard to manage, and I started to have an anxiety attack. I never had anxiety attacks in regular life. This was definitely not regular life though, or at least as I knew it to be. Luna pulled me close and began to comfort me. She stroked my hair and began to speak, trying to calm me down. It will be okay. Just follow your breath and relax. Nothing bad will happen to you, I promise. This place has a strange magic to it. This will pass. All you have to do is get through a few more seconds of this. I am here for you. It will be okay. Her words were a great comfort to me. Her voice was soft and motherly. I had begun to calm down almost instantly. The sky went from red back to brown. It then changed to an orange color before finally settling back to sky blue. What is going on with the sky? I asked as Luna smiled at me with sympathy in her eyes. This place, this dimension that you have come to, is called the Silver Lands. Here your mental and emotional state have a direct effect on reality itself. Control of one's own emotions and passions is a prerequisite for anyone that aspires towards a heroic life. Very few humans are capable of taking more than 10 steps in this world without absolutely breaking down. How can one hope to master that which is outside themselves if they can't even obtain a slight mastery of their inner being? The lessons of this world are very subtle and even metaphysical. You must pay close attention. This world is designed to prepare you for the next one. Most people don't even get off this beach though. It is called the Beach of Melancholy. It is a sort of test, you could say. For some time, I said nothing in response to her words. It was a lot to take in. I had expected an adventurous fight with a dragon or a damsel in distress. I never thought there would be so much personal development and learning involved in this hero business. After I had wrapped my mind around her words, I began to ask her some question. So, why are all these people just staring at the sand like that? Also, what is the need for all these tests? Don't the governors want people to visit their lands? She nodded in response to my questions before she spoke. I was going to make it off this beach no matter what it took, and maybe her advice could help me. Well, if you look at the sand you will see that there are many seashells around. These seashells are magic seashells and act kind of like a television screen. Each one shows you your underlying desires and aspirations. They can even show you the future, some say. Well, all the people you see around us got stuck in these shell visions. Every person is said to have one seashell around here that is for them. Every other shell is a trick of the devil and a charade. All the people you see around you got stuck in one of these tricks. As you look into a shell you will be shown a vision. Once in the vision you will have to make a choice. Is it the right vision for you, the right motivation, or the wrong one? If you choose wrong, then you get stuck in this melancholy place for nobody knows how long. Some say forever. But if you choose the correct seashell, then you get to leave the beach and explore the Silver Lands in full. This seashell will give you added power, motivation, and devotion to this heroic task. I really hope you find the seashell for you, Max. I look forward to seeing you again one day soon. Goodbye and good luck until then. She planted a wet kiss on my cheek before turning to run. She left the beach behind her as she went off on her own heroic adventure. I hoped that I would see her again. As she left me there alone, I noticed that in her hand she held a large seashell. She clutched her seashell to her chest and ran towards her journey with joy on her face. She had definitely chosen correctly, but would I? Would I choose the right vision? With a drawn-out sigh, I had resolved to do as she suggested. I walked about in a very somber fashion. That place just seemed to zap the happiness from your bones. Large seashells about the size of dinner plates were lying everywhere in the sand. I reached down to pick one up as I looked into its bowl-like surface. As I stared at the shell, the surface began to morph and change into a sort of screen. It was like I was staring at a movie screen, but it was much stranger than that. A strong vision began to overtake my entire surroundings. Then I left the sandy beach and went headfirst into a strange vision, a vision that felt so real. I was sitting on a large leather sofa. On my wrist hung a gold presidential Rolex watch. Black leather Armani shoes were on my feet, and I wore a matching Armani suit jacket. An extremely beautiful blonde-haired woman sat beside me in a light blue-colored silk nightgown. She looked towards me and smiled. She planted a very long kiss on my lips and stared into my eyes. I was at full attention as she began to speak. "Oh, Max, I am so glad that you gave up all of that adventurous and self-discovery stuff of yours. When you quit going to that courtyard and decided instead to start your own corporation, I just knew you were the man for me. The old you only cared about helping others and going on adventures. The new you just bought me a red Ferrari for my birthday. Oh, Max, I love you so much. Come on, darling, let's pour us some champagne and have our chauffeur drive us around in the Bentley all night. What do you say, darling?" Her words had a strange effect on me. I was overtaken by lust and excitement as I nodded in agreement to her words. The woman planted a long wet kiss upon my lips as my entire body shook with excitement. She was the most beautiful woman that I had ever seen in person. The woman then stood up with a playful look in her eyes. She had begun to speak once more. "I am going to slip into something a little more comfortable. I will be right back, babe. What do you think? Should I just put on some lingerie and throw on a coat over it?" I nodded with excitement as she walked off towards the bedroom. When she had gone, I suddenly realized that what was going on wasn't real. I remembered the young girl's warnings. I stood up and threw off my Rolex watch in defiance. I raised up my hands and began to yell. "This isn't the future that I really want. This is not my life. I choose adventure and leadership. This is not what I really want. I choose the life a hero." The vision abruptly ended at the conclusion of my proclamation. The Armani shoes and the big house were gone, thank God. I found myself standing back in the sand holding the shell. The words self-gratification and pleasure were written on the shell in cursive when I looked back at it. I smirked as I broke the shell over my knee and threw it into the sand. I began to look around again for a better stone. As I looked for a shell, the sadness of that place began to leave me. I wanted to be remembered as a contributor to the well-being of humanity and not merely a selfish pleasure seeker. I would live the life of a hero, of this there was no longer any doubt. All I had to do now was find the right shell. A particular seashell caught my interest as I bent down to pick it up. It was slightly shinier than the others and looked much more attractive to me. As I cupped it in my hands, another vision began to overtake me. I was sitting in a chair within a grand coliseum. There were hundreds of people sitting around, and camera crews stood all over the place. A very well-spoken and charismatic man with a Hispanic accent was up on the stage with a microphone in his hands. He was telling jokes as a beautiful black-haired woman in a black shimmering dress came from the back of the stage to join him. She began to speak. "Are you all ready for the next award? This is the MTV Music Awards, and your votes have spoken. It is my great pleasure to present the candidates for the Rock and Roll Video of the Year award. First, we have Blowfish Eaters and their song, The Never-Ending Goodbye. Second, we have Whiplash Kings and their song, Can't Slow Down Now. Third, we have Purple Tendencies and their song, Chaotic Order. Lastly, we have Libertine Lovers and their song, One Last Time." A large screen overhead showed pictures of each of the four bands. The tension was thick as everyone was wondering who was going to win. The male host then started to speak in a comedic way. "Is there a little birdie somewhere that could tell me who is going to win?" As he said this, someone in a yellow bird costume ran out on stage with a slip of paper in his hands. The yellow bird handed the slip of paper to the man as he yelled out the winner. "Give it up for Purple Tendencies and their single, Chaotic Order. Get your purple butts down here, boys." I was shocked as the people sitting beside me suddenly jumped up with excitement. They grabbed me up out of my chair and rushed me towards the stage. We walked out into the aisle as everyone stood up, clapped, and cheered. The whole building seemed to shake from the loudness of the crowd's cheering. The lights shimmered off of my black leather jacket and combat boots. All of a sudden, an ecstatic feeling overtook me. It just felt so good. All these people were cheering for me and my band. Everyone loved me. A large grin shined on my face as I walked towards the stage. My fellow bandmates ushered me forward to the stage. They were acting as if I should give the speech. I shrugged and did as they asked. My confidence was through the roof at that moment. The beautiful woman then handed me a large golden trophy with the MTV logo upon it. She smiled wide and began to interview me. "So how does it feel to have the best rock music video for this year?" She handed me the mic as everyone looked at me. With a large smile on my face, I began to speak. "Well, it feels awesome. I am so grateful for the amount of success we have had. I and the band would like to thank all of our fans. Thank you, everyone. We love you." As I finished my speech, a woman shouted, "I love you too, Max. We all love you." I then shook both of the hosts' hands and slipped off the stage with my band. We shook many hands and received much praise as we walked back to our seats. It felt like I was the most popular kid in school and more. It was in that moment that I remembered this was all just a hallucination. I stopped dead on the spot and yelled, "No, this is not what I want. I want to help other people and be a hero. Enough of this. I want my life to be in service of the betterment of humanity." The vision ended with a flash. I shattered the shell against my leg, just like the last one. As I threw the shell to the ground, I had already started to look for another one. I didn't plan on getting stuck in the beach of melancholy for long. My shell wasn't far, I could feel it. With determination, I walked through the sand for a few minutes without picking up any of the shells. I just looked around and tried to understand it all. It was very strange. Hundreds of people just stood with their jaws hanging and their eyes slack. They stared at the shells in their hands like they were hypnotized. My curiosity got the better of me as I decided to conduct an experiment. I pushed one of them, a middle-aged military-looking man, as he dropped his shell and began to scream with anguish. His screams were absolutely terrible. He acted as if his life was in danger. I thought the man was going to attack me, but he just picked up the shell in a panic. The man stared at the shell in his hands and went straight back into his trance as if nothing had happened. There are some very strange forces at work in the beach of melancholy. If one is to find himself there, he must get out as fast as possible. About 30 yards away, something sparkled in the distance. I started to walk fast towards it. It soon became evident that it was another shell. This shell looked different than all the others, though. It was made of pure silver and shimmered in the sunlight. I picked it up and thrust my hands towards the sky. All of a sudden, a beam of light from the sun shot straight into the seashell. When the beam hit the seashell, a brilliant flash occurred. Rays of every color shot out in all directions from the silver shell. One of these beams seemed to penetrate into my chest. Tears filled my eyes as I was taken of the spirit into a vision. This vision had a quality unlike anything I had ever experienced in my life, the quality of bliss. There is nothing that compares to the ecstasy of the spirit, only further ecstasy of the spirit. With a great speed, I ascended through a space of infinite beauty. I felt like a rocket that had taken off from the ground. I flew straight upwards towards the sun as unbounded waves of joy rushed over me. In between the ground and the sun I saw many strange things. One of these things was a fluid, liquid substance that sparkled in the sunlight. This substance formed into a small spirit with a bow and arrow on her shoulder and a harp in her hand. The gooey substance of which she was made began to fly in all directions. She began to pluck the strings of her harp as the gooey substance pulsed with a silver light. The small angel soon turned into a solid being as all the substance began to spiral around me. This liquid substance turned into images before my eyes. I became lost in the images which I beheld in the silvery, gooey substance. I saw the faces of everyone whom I had ever loved. My mother, father, grandparents, friends, and peers came into my vision. I saw the actions of my past as if I was an outside observer. I watched as I hurt others, talked behind their backs, and thought of my needs before theirs. In that moment, I saw how bad of a person I had been. I began to cry with terror and shame. Every image hit a chord in my heart. Had I done anything good with my life? Why did it all look so dark and terrible, so selfish? After a while, I remembered that I was in a vision. Dark storm clouds had gathered around us, and rain was pouring down. All was dark and gray. I could not see the sky above or the ground below. The angel and I floated in the air for a very long time. We floated in silence. The sound of the rain and thunder was all I could hear as I hung my head in sorrow. I soon snapped out of my foggy depression to find the beautiful angel staring coldly at me. Her gaze was terrifying. I could not look at the angel in the face. I was so ashamed. My ascent had been slowed by the memories of my past. Why had I been such a terrible person? The angel came close and grabbed my wrist. As she grabbed me, a brilliant light flashed through her arm and entered me. She suddenly grew very tall and terrifying. With the intensity of a strike of lightning, she bellowed the words, "Who are you?" It hung in the air for a very long time. This question cut so deep that I was absolutely stuck. I mean, when was the last time you actually thought deeply about this question? Was I that terrible person of my past? Was I just Max Hargrove? No, these things were just a great misunderstanding. Max Hargrove was just a label, something I inherited. The actions of my past were just surface phenomenon. I could feel an incredible ecstasy begin to bubble up inside of me. I cannot put the conclusion that I reached into words. Who I am was a concept of such potential, a potential that seemed infinite. Anything was possible if only I would live from this realization. In that moment, I decided to let go of the past and become a better man in the present. It was time for some serious change. No longer could I reside in that blissful ignorance of the multitude. In response to this realization, the gray began to diminish. It was replaced by the sunlight, and the rain began to subside. Soon, the sky was clear and the clouds had gone. I had passed through the storm of sorrow. The angel winked as she zoomed away from me. I began to chase after her as we ascended high into the atmosphere. We left behind the pleasant skies of Earth as I chased the lunar angel through space. All of a sudden, the angel came to an abrupt halt. I slammed straight into her as she hugged me tight. She handled me like a rag doll and shoved me into her bow like she was knocking an arrow. With my feet on the rest, she grasped my hands against the string. She pulled back, and as she let go, she yelled, "May you discover the nature of your being. Amen." Like a bullet, I flew straight into the star of our solar system. I pierced the outer core of the sun. The entirety of my being began to burst and explode as I joined with the sun. In a very strange way, I merged with the solar body. I was the sun. I shined down on the ground below as a very strange sight came into my view. I looked down to see a tiny speck on the sand below. That speck was me. I was looking down at myself. It was all just so strange and overwhelming. In that moment, I began to realize just how small I really was in this vast universe. It was the most humbling experience of my life. When I looked down at the people on the beach below, my heart filled with sympathy. How could I help them? How could I ease their pain and make them better human beings? A voice sounded through the air in response to these feelings. This is the motivation, the driving force behind your life. It is in the name of helping others that heroes live. It is time for you to live for the all instead of the I. Discover the essence of your true nature, and the means of helping humanity will become known to you. The days of dreaming and wishing for are forever done. It is time to get to work. At the conclusion of these words, I found myself standing back on the beach with the shell in my hands. Well, it seems that I had found my shell after all. I had found my glorious motivation. The young girl had been right. It felt like I could do anything. A confidence and energy I had never before known began to grow within me. It was time to get to work. I looked at the shell in my hands as I noticed something. The words, "Live for the all," instead of the I, were engraved with silver letters upon the shell. I smiled as the meaning of these words filled me with joy. It was time to leave the beach of melancholy. It was time for my adventure in the Silverlands to really begin. I took one last look behind me at the zombie people as I left the beach behind me. I walked towards the sun, towards the realization of my destiny.